This EHEDG Connects news update announces another edition of our popular EHEDG Connects online webinar series. And the presenter of this edition is a microbiologist by training, very successful in the sciences, but also in the food industry, where she works as a global hygiene specialist at EHEDG company member Vikan. And that company provides cleaning utensils to the food industry. Debra Smith, nice to have you. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, sure. So I'm a microbiologist by training, and I've got about, over 35 years of experience in the food industry now. I started off working in a poultry factory in the micro laboratory, so very much hands-on experience there. And then 16 years with the UK Food Safety Division of the UK government, working on contamination control. Then at Camden BRI, working with the Hygiene department as their research manager, looking at ways in which we could help control contamination within the food environment. I've been a member of EHEDG for, 15 years or so, taken part in many of their activities, including the World Congress, which we organised here in the UK in 2018. And I've written many papers and guidelines that have hygienic design at the core of the contamination control strategies.
Now, Deb, if I'm not mistaken, EHEDG hasn't published a guideline on hygienic design of cleaning utensils yet. So how does this topic of your webinar relate to the EHEDG guidelines that exist at this moment?
Well, we've known about hygienic design for a long time, and previously most of the guidance and information that we have on hygienic design has been focused very much at the food production equipment. But now we're understanding that there's many other things within a food production environment that can contribute to contamination of the food product. So it's about trying to apply the hygienic design principles that we've established to many other things within the food production environment.
Okay, so let's dive in now. What is the goal of your webinar? How did you approach your topic?
What we wanted to do was start with what we already know, what is already out there in terms of requirements, the legal requirements, the guidance that's available, but then actually dig into areas which tend to be missed a bit more. So we all know about hygienic design, and we've applied it for many years in the factory to the food production equipment, but there are so many other sources of contamination in a food factory that we really need to focus on as well. And the new GFSI requirements pull in some of that, and what I'm saying is as well, there are other areas even beyond the GFSI areas that we should also be focusing on.
You mentioned the new GFSI hygienic design benchmarking requirements. We have another interview about that. We will include the link in the comments. How do you expect these new requirements to affect your field of work?
As I say, most of the guidance and information that's available so far is focused on the food production equipment, but the GFSI benchmarks seek to expand this to other equipment and to the facilities that the food is produced in. So that's the buildings, the utilities, and the equipment that's used to either produce it or to maintain it in a safe way. So I think they will definitely help to raise awareness. The only thing is that at the moment they are voluntary. So because it will take a while for these to be adopted fully by the certification operators like BRC and FSSC 22000, it will give the industry time to adapt to the new benchmark requirements and then to put them into place.
Now, Deb, apart from your role at Vikan, within the EHEDG community, we know you as a very knowledgeable scientist who is hesitant of proposing facts that are not facts, not scientifically proven. So I assume that the facts that you present in your webinar are scientifically proven. Can you give us an example of that?
So we focus on hygienic design of cleaning equipment and food handling tools. And that's because there have been a number of studies that have been undertaken that show that they can become both a source and a vector of contamination. And one particular study that we quote quite often is the one undertaken by Camden BRI, which was done on behalf of the UK government, where they looked at a number of chilled food factories, ready-to-eat factories, and when they sampled various things within the food production environment, 47% of the cleaning equipment that they tested was positive for the pathogen Listeria monocytogenes.
One of the things that makes this EHEDG Connects online webinar very interesting is that Debra combines her scientific knowledge with her hands-on working experience on the working floor in food processing environments. Debra, you included some real-life examples from the working floors, right?
We've got some really interesting stuff in the presentation. I'm really lucky that I get to go and see a load of food factories normally in normal times, and when I do, I get to see some really interesting stuff. So site-made equipment that's not been maintained or cleaned properly and is in a real state. So what we've done is we've used some of those pictures to introduce it into the presentation, just to give people a feel for what we see, and maybe they'll recognise something that they see in their factory too, and we'll make them think a bit.
Now, Debra, you already know this, but maybe our viewers don't. The format of the EHEDG Connects online webinars consists of a presentation, your presentation, and a Q&A session afterwards, in which anyone present can pose questions to you, which will be answered in the webinar. And if there are too many questions, we will follow up on them later. What kind of questions do you expect to get after this presentation?
So probably the ones that I always get. In relation to cleaning tools, it's how do we find hygienically designed tools? What are the things we should look for? How do we look after those tools? How do we clean them? How often do we clean them? Which kind of chemicals should we use? And they're actually quite complicated questions. You would think it wouldn't be difficult to clean a piece of cleaning equipment, but it really does depend on so many things. But I'm sure that those questions will come through again.
For what type of food industry professionals will this webinar be particularly interesting?
So I definitely like to see people from the food industry there, preferably from different areas of the food industry, from the high risk ready-to-eat chilled food manufacturers to even the lower risk ambient stable canned foods. But then obviously it's important to include equipment manufacturers, chemical manufacturers. We're also looking at materials of construction and compatibility with cleaning chemicals and disinfectants that are used within the industry. So I think it's very important to have a broad range.
Well, we conclude this interview, of course, with an open invitation to anyone who is still watching to register for your webinar, and I leave the stage to you to do that, Deb.
Okay. So I'd just like to invite everybody to join us at the webinar at the link below, and pass on the link to any of your connections within LinkedIn. Hygienic design is really important, and if you can start applying that within your food production environment, not just to the food processing equipment, but to everything that you do, then I'm sure it will help improve your food safety. So come on to the webinar and learn a bit more about the information we've got to share with you.
Debra Smith, microbiologist and global hygiene specialist at Vikan and the presenter of our upcoming EHEDG Connects online webinar. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for this interview.
Thank you.